Adrian Newey is one of, if not the best F1 car designer in the history of the sport. And his work has gained him 12 drivers' titles, 11 constructors' titles, and a manslaughter charge. Yeah, this is the story of the F1 car designer who is behind the most dominant car currently in F1.
Adrian was a perfectionist, unquestionably the best designer in the world, race car designer in the world, I think.
You know, his results across his entire career speak entirely for themselves.
Adrian, when people say that motor racing is really grown-ups playing with toys, looking at what you're doing now.
Adrian Newey was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in England on December 26, 1958. His father was a veterinarian and his mother was an ambulance driver during World War II. He attended Repton Public School and was alongside one of the most controversial figures you can think of. And no, I'm not talking about Helmut Marko, I'm talking, of course, about Jeremy Clarkson. Newey was asked to leave Repton at the age of 16 after an incident at Greenslade concert where he pushed up the sound levels, cracking the building's stained glass windows. It seems he always wanted to push the boundaries of technology. He graduated from the University of Southampton in 1980 with a first-class honours degree in aeronautics and astronautics. After graduating, he began working in motorsport for the Fittipaldi Formula One team under Harvey Postlethwaite. In 1981, he joined the March team and began designing racing cars after a period as a race engineer for Johnny Cocotto in European Formula 2. His first project, the March OTP sports car, was a highly successful design and won the IMSA GTP title 2 years running. Newey's first design in F1, though, was the 1988 March 881. And it was surprisingly competitive, especially when you consider where March were at the time. Ivan Capelli finished second in Portugal and even passed Alain Prost's McLaren Honda Turbo for the lead of the Japanese Grand Prix, briefly on lap 16. In 1990, March became Leighton House and Newey was promoted to the role of technical director. Capelli finished second in France after a late pass on Prost's Ferrari, but the team result declined after that. And Newey was fired in the summer of 1990. But he had already decided to move on anyway after he said that he couldn't work for a team that was run by accountants. Because I think all of us understand that a team run by accountants would be, well, boring. Luckily for Newey though, this would kick off a run of success as he was already approached by the Williams F1 team. And you may be thinking to yourself, who cares, it's only Williams, but remember in the 90s and the 80s, Williams was a dominant force in F1. In the 1980s and 1990s, Williams was a top team with technical director Patrick Head quickly signing Newey. Newey and Head had become the dominant design partnership in the early 90s with a superior budget, drivers and resources at their disposal. By mid-1991, Newey's FW14 chassis was a match for the previously dominant McLaren. But early season reliability issues and Ayrton Senna's efforts prevented Nigel Mansell from taking the title. In 1992, Mansell took the driver's crown and Newey secured his first constructor's title. And in 1993, delivered a second constructor's title, this time with Alain Prost at the wheel of the FW15C. In 1994, there was a rare dip in performance for Newey designed cars and the team struggled to match the Rory Byrne designed Benetton for pace and reliability, and this was added to by the tragic events at the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, where Ayrton Senna tragically passed away. And it was shortly after this that cracks began to show in Newey's relationship with Williams team management. Newey was placed on gardening leave prior to joining McLaren in 1996 as he had decided to leave due to disputes between himself and Frank Williams, not including him on driver decisions around Mansell and Hill, which he had previously agreed to be included on, and this made him furious. However, in those 7 years with Williams, he managed to clinch 4 drivers' titles. And the man had proven himself to be an absolute asset to anyone else who wanted to get to the top of Formula One. And that's where he'd go, again with McLaren. However, not before some interesting turn of events around the tragedy that had taken place with Ayrton Senna. After the tragic death of Ayrton Senna at the San Marino Grand Prix, Newey and several other technical staff at the Williams team were charged with manslaughter. In an initial ruling in December of 1997, though, Newey was acquitted. The acquittal was upheld on appeal then later down the line in November of 1999. But in January 2003, this was brought up once again by the Italian Supreme Court, who reopened the case, and it looked like this could once again be a problem for Newey and those other members of the Williams design team. And it was reopened, citing material errors with the original case. Finally though, the court gave Newey a full acquittal on May of 2005, and the case was closed for good. But an interesting amalgamation of things to come out of his time at Williams, from 4 drivers' titles to a manslaughter charge. I don't think many other F1 designers will have that on their resume, or probably want it on their resume either. In 1997, Newey was unable to influence the design of the McLaren car and was forced to improve on the Neil Oatley design while concentrating on the 1998 car. McLaren won the 1998 and 1999 titles, with Mika Hakkinen narrowly missing out on a 3rd driver's title in 2000. Newey had once again designed his magic around these cars, but unfortunately there were problems at McLaren, and this was poorly timed as Ferrari, for once in its life, had gotten its act together and was on the up towards once again going on a string of championships. Rumours persisted that Newey wanted to leave McLaren, and by late 2004 his future began to look uncertain. There was speculation that Newey could return to Williams or even leave the sport entirely. His contract with McLaren was extended by 6 months at the end of 2005, at which point he was expected to take a sabbatical or retire from Formula 1 design altogether. He was notably unhappy with the matrix system that McLaren had brought in under the leadership of Martin Whitmarsh, where a variety of technical directors would take different pieces of the car design. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because McLaren have somewhat brought this back, which is interesting given it's the exact reason why Newey left. However, lucky for us as F1 fans, on the 8th of November 2005, Red Bull Racing announced that Newey would join the team from February 2006 and would be getting roughly $10 million a year. Worth it. Newey's time at Red Bull would go on to be way more successful than I think even he could have imagined when joining. The 2006 Red Bull car was not designed by Newey, but David Coulthard managed nonetheless to use it to his advantage, securing 3rd place and 6 points at the Monaco Grand Prix. The 2007 Red Bull car was designed by Newey, and it was incredibly fast, but unfortunately equally unreliable. And each driver retired 7 times in a season of only 17 races. The 2008 chassis though was the most intricate design to have rolled out of their factory, but the team slipped down the grid after the second half of the season, likely focusing on the 2009 regulation change. And that was a good call, because Newey would get things right. Unfortunately, one other design team led by Ross Brawn would get it even rightier, and a subscribe would be a show of brawn. Stole that from Mr. Who's the Boss. The 2009 Red Bull car represented a large step up in performance for the team, with 1-2 finishes at Shanghai and at the British Grand Prix. But the 2010 car was finally the class of the field, as Brawn had fallen out of contention after the first half of 2009. It won 15 out of a possible 19 pole positions and won the Constructors' Championship as well as a First Drivers' Championship for Sebastian Vettel. And in 2011, the RB7 took 18 out of the 19 pole positions and won 12 races, securing both the World Drivers and Constructors' Championships. In 2012, Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel once again claimed the championship at a dramatic Brazilian Grand Prix, to the chagrin of Alonso, the second time where Alonso had unfortunately lost the title at the last race to Newey's Red Bull team. In 2013, the RB9, along with Sebastian Vettel, dominated the field after the summer break and took 9 races in a row. An utterly epic show of dominance by Sebastian Vettel and the RB9. Newey extended his contract with the Red Bull Racing team in June of 2014 with a wider responsibility, including allowing him to have a playground in the new Red Bull Technology and Advanced Technologies playgrounds.
I quite often find if I think about a problem for a while, kind of store it, walk away, do something else, and the brain's an amazing thing. It seems to tick away on a problem, and sometimes a solution will pop up in the shower the next day, the next week, whatever.
Unfortunately though, for the next 8 seasons, Newey's car designs would be held back by the unreliability of the Renault and then unfortunately Honda power units in the back of the car to a point where no amount of aerodynamics could make the cars win. Fortunately for someone else at Red Bull though, this would allow Dan Fallows to really show what he was made of, and culminated in a 2021 championship bid before he flew the nest and is now doing something with Aston Martin. Not sure how that's going. Adrian Newey is a true legend in the world of Formula One, with his exceptional talent for designing championship-winning cars and being the only technical director in F1 who still draws out and sketches the original initial car concept by hand. On top of this, the RB18 has now given Max Verstappen another title, as well as Red Bull a 5th Constructors' Championship, and the RB19 looks more or less on the field to dominate over the course of this season. So Newey is in no ways done yet, and while he has to renew his contract this year, I don't think, given the amount of freedom he has at Red Bull, that's going to be an issue. From his early days with March and Leighton House to his dominant years at Williams McLaren and his current success with Red Bull, Newey has consistently pushed the boundaries of what is possible in F1 car design. His tireless pursuit of perfection has led to some of the most iconic and successful racing cars in history, and his influence on the sport is immeasurable. Adrian Newey's legacy in Formula One will likely be felt for years to come, much like the immeasurable effect on my smiling muscles if you subscribe.